If all is well, I am live. Now, I'm not surprised that I don't see a lot of people in chat, because indeed I haven't been going live regularly lately, and that's a bad thing. So, yeah, I do hope that there are people watching. If so, say something in the chat. If not, I will wait a moment to see if people will join. Hi there, Richard. And yes, you are the first, it seems. Oh, sorry. Don't worry, it's COVID. Oh, sorry, it's not. Sorry, it's not COVID. No. I hope we'll have a nice kind of group of people. Let's see who's joining us. Hi there, Ludicrous. If people want to join in the talking bit itself, so yeah, there is that. Remote Ruby is in the chat of. Let me see if I can do this. No, this is something else. I don't like doing this, but okay. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Never mind that. Okay, hi there, good people of the interwebs. I was also looking at the Discord server, because apparently someone joined the Discord server. I have no idea, and then I was asked if I kicked this person, but obviously I haven't, because I don't. If you can find our Discord server and you join it, well, you're more than welcome to stay, because unless, of course, you behave like a bastard. But it's very difficult to behave like a bastard over at our server, I'm pretty sure of that. Hi there, Morris. Good of you to join us. So, yeah, I have no idea who Rose is, but apparently she's already no longer on the server. Weird. 6 people watching. Oh, that's quite a good number for my stream. I mean, obviously, I'm grateful if there's 10, and 6 is almost halfway there. And it's only in 2 minutes after we went live. Guys, I am sorry that I didn't go live as regularly lately, but the heat is absolutely murder on me. I can't deal with this freaking weather. Oh, according to YouTube, now I only have 3 people watching. I believe you, Ludicrous. I have no idea who Rose Wrist is. I simply have no idea. I mean, a wild Rose Wrist appeared is the message I got today on Discord. 2050, and that's basically all there is to it for me. I mean, you guys know everyone is welcome. I don't kick people. Too lazy for it, to be honest. I mean, yeah, that's basically it. How well can you guys hear me, by the way? I'm a little bit curious on that. It should be well, but normally I have Michael to help me out on that front, but apparently he's not here today, which is a shame, really. But then again, it's also a holiday in Switzerland, so maybe he went out to have some fun. Today's topic, might as well start on it, is capitalism versus socialism, and whether that is indeed the dichotomy that we need to look at. Is it capitalism versus socialism, or is it something else? And Rose is a dude and a 17-year-old high school graduate. Okay. Yeah, sure. Does anyone know this Rose person then? I mean, I'm more than welcome to welcome him in the server and on the stream, obviously, because yeah, why not? The topic today, capitalism versus socialism, because people keep talking about how it must be that dichotomy. Either socialism is great or capitalism is great, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. But is it a fair comparison? Because personally, I don't think it is. Because capitalism is an economic system and socialism is an economic and political system. They are not the same. Now, obviously, people have all sorts of ideas how socialism is a good thing, which is, I wanted to say understandable, but it's not understandable if people still think socialism is a good idea, considering the track record has, considering the track record socialism has worldwide. I mean, it hasn't worked in a single country yet. And I do say yet because, of course, someone else is going to do socialism differently. But in all fairness, I don't think someone will do socialism differently because it always turns out into the same crap. And the reason why I think it always turns out into the same crap is because socialism inherently has to be authoritarian. It has to talk about slavery. And who's going to be the slave? Well, everyone who's not the leader. Why do I think that is the case? Because socialism and freedom are two completely different things. You cannot be free under socialism. Now, why can't you be free under socialism? Because socialism has demands. I mean, there's a reason when we're talking in the Western world about equality, people that like socialism pushed in the idea of equity. Now, under equity, there is no equality. And this is weird because you'd think, well, under equity, we would all earn the same. Yeah, well, partly that's true. But we aren't the same. So us all earning the same is kind of ignoring the fact that there are important differences between people. Now, for example, in our crowd, I mean, Ludicrous is the highest educated among us, as far as I know. And he's a brilliant dude anyway, and that has nothing to do with his education, but fair enough. I, myself, have been working on higher education jobs for most of my life, but my education is not the same as my work status, or at least it wasn't. And that wasn't a problem until socialism in the Netherlands decided that more parts of our society needed to be controlled. Because that's what socialism does. It creates a measurement of control. Now, what is that measurement of control based on? That measurement of control under socialism is based on arbitrary rulings. Well, I mean, if you would have any other form of government, would that not be the same? Well, it depends on the sort of government you have, obviously, but in most systems of government, no, it would not be the same. It's not the government that decides that you can or can't do something. Now, obviously, you can't break the laws, and that's inherently a good thing. I mean, it would be good for a society if people don't go out stealing each other's bikes. Now, why would that be a good thing? Because the idea of personal property is important to people. I've earned this, I've worked for this, this is mine, I don't want you to steal it off of me. Inherently, this is an important thing to a person. Now, I won't say that people will identify themselves with the property they have, because that's definitely not how it works, but by making sure that you have certain properties, you also create some safety for yourself and your family. And that's what personal property is all about. And this is where socialism kind of always misses reality. Because socialism is all about sharing. But if I share what I have with 10 other people, and those 10 other people have less than me, I will end up with less. Now, if I have a huge amount of something and I share it around, that less bit isn't inherently a problem. But if I have, for example, 5 breads and I have to share it with 10 people, all of a sudden, I don't have 5 breads. Now, if those other 10 people all have 1 bread, then yeah, sure, I still lose because I will end up with 1 bread and 4 breads divided by 11, which is still not a good thing, but it's survivable. But if I'm the only one with 5 breads and the other 11 have nothing, then I will end up with less than half of a bread. And this is what equity is all about. Those not performing or not carrying their weight will weigh down the rest of society. Now, is this how socialism works? People like to think that this is not how socialism works. But yeah, this is pretty much how socialism works. And this is why people kind of like to put the dichotomy capitalism versus socialism. Because in capitalism, well, one guy has all the money and the rest has very little. Therefore, it's unfair. Because if socialism had one guy with all the money, then suddenly all the money would be divided among all the people. Which, by the way, isn't true. I mean, they've always said that, but there hasn't been a capitalistic country or a socialistic country where creating wealth by giving it to other people in fact created wealth. It creates inflation. You look at Venezuela. Oh no, they were going to spread the wealth. Yeah, sure, they're going to spread the wealth. But all of a sudden, instead of 1 bread costing a few bolivar, or whatever the coin is in Venezuela, it now costs a lot. This is something we've seen in the past, for example, in countries like Italy. When Italy was raising up the debt, it devalued the coin massively. Now, Italy in itself hasn't really been a socialistic economy, but they had socialistic tendencies. They've had it many a time, and they just basically crap out their system, and then all of a sudden they devaluate their coin a lot, and they're back on it pretty fast. Now, why was Italy able to recover from that pretty fast when it did this in the past? Well, it's because Italy also has a large economy. And the devaluation of coins is indeed a bad thing, but if you have enough companies to work a way around it, then sure. So the devaluation of money in Italy wasn't caused by socialism. Socialism had an influence, but on average it wasn't caused by socialism. It was caused by mismanagement. Plan economy. Now, plan economy is something that you will find in socialism. And you shouldn't find in free societies. But then again, most Western societies aren't free societies. We are, as a lot of people would say, social democracies. And the social part, even though social and socialist are worlds apart, it would seem that in a Western world, a lot of social democrats tend to move towards socialist democrats. And there is an inherent problem in that. And this is why we now get told how our society needs to thrive to become equity societies. Okay, back to the chat. Even the Bible did not go that far. The New Testament clearly stated in parables that when there were 10 brides and 5 of them did not have enough oil for the lamps for their wedding, they were kicked. Well, yeah, there you have it. I mean, you need to be able to provide for yourself. And if people want to help you, all the good to it. And this is the one thing that socialists constantly tell us. And this is why they constantly lie to us. Because in a capitalistic system, we've built systems to try and provide for the less empowered, so to speak, for poor people. And then Socialists claim that this is a socialist thing. But mind you, welfare or the health system that we have and in most of the Western world came from the church. They tried to give alms to the poor. Why? So that they could have somewhat of a life. Now, obviously, the alms they were given were very little because wealth wasn't that easily distributed. But did it change now that our Western world countries have a better social welfare net, so to speak? Well, no, it didn't make it better at all. How come? Well, the people that are poor are still complaining that they are poor, which is somewhat understandable, but now they're complaining that they are poor from an entitled position. Back in the day, people were complaining they were poor because they couldn't manage. Now they don't have to manage. And therein lies the inherent problem with socialism. Socialism talks about how society needs to carry the weak. Funny enough, capitalism doesn't do that. Because capitalism doesn't talk about society. Socialism is a political structure. And it also has an economic part to it, but it's a political structure. Capitalism doesn't have any political part to it. How do we know that capitalism doesn't have any political part to it? Because it is basically made of freedom. This is also why there are no capitalist countries in the world today, which is funny because we constantly get told capitalism is the problem. It's not capitalism that has the problem, though. It's not capitalism that is the problem. The problem is that we have state-sponsored capitalism, so to speak, or indeed socialism. Now, do we really have socialism in the world? Yeah, well, obviously in countries like China and Venezuela. But if we look at a country, I mean, I'm from the Netherlands. If we look at the Netherlands, yeah, we have socialism. If we look at America, yeah, they have socialism. Every country where they are paying people to stay home, this is a socialist drive. Yeah, but Corona. No, it's not about Corona. It's about population control. Because if I can make sure people don't go to work, I can kind of predict which companies will survive and which won't. And there you have it. The destruction of society. The way society is driving now. This is what socialists want. Is this what capitalists want? No, obviously not. Because for capitalism to work, depending on the political system, because yes, capitalism can work in a socialistic hellhole, funny enough. The only reason why capitalism doesn't work in these socialistic hellholes is because governments deny them the right of a free market. Capitalism needs a free market. I mean, if we look at China right now, China is becoming more and more wealthy. Why? Because they basically have a lot of trade. They have a massive amount of trade going on, but most of that trade goes to other countries. In the country itself, I mean, we're talking about a country with over 1 billion citizens, so obviously there's a lot of trade going on in the country itself. But it's nowhere compared to the trade that goes to other countries. Now, why is that? Well, because when China export goods, they do so under the concept of capitalism. I have a good, you want to buy it, this is the price we agree on, let's go for it. Funny enough, if you want to import goods to China, China will tell you, wait a second, those goods are yours, but I don't agree with you bringing those goods here. So you have to have a company in China to be able to import these goods. And if you have a company in China, well, China needs to be 50% owner of that company. 49. I can't remember precisely. I haven't got the numbers right, sorry. But China owns part of your country. A company. Why does China need to own your company? Well, because they need to be able to exert control over your company. So do we have free socialism in China, or do we have free capitalism in China? Well, that's the funny thing. The CCP has made a mix of socialism and capitalism. Outward, it's mostly mostly capitalistic when trading with the outside world. When the outside world wants to trade with China, it becomes socialism again. They decide how much comes in, they decide how well it comes in, they decide for what price it comes in. So why is it that people constantly talk about socialism and capitalism as if it is a dichotomy? They talk about it as if it is a dichotomy, not so much because it's true, but because they want people to think this is true. In the Western world, we are being lulled to sleep, or rather dozed by whatever you want to call it, whatever pattern you want to call it, into a form of passivism. We don't seem to understand what socialism is, and we don't seem to understand what capitalism is. Now, again, if I look in the Netherlands isn't a capitalistic country. People keep claiming that it is. It is not. Our healthcare system is socialized. Well, they wouldn't say it's socialized, they would call it social. Yeah, sure, you can call it that, but it's not. It's socialized. In the UK, it's pretty much the same. All citizens have to be insured, but that insurance isn't voluntary. So, sorry, hiccup. But if that insurance isn't voluntary, is it then a choice of the people? No, it's not. It's a choice of the government. The government is mandating you to do certain things. Capitalism is a Marxist invention. I'm not really sure on that one, Leprechaun, but they use it as their devil, that's for sure. Marxism is a system built to create a new elite. And capitalism, or the wealthy, obviously, are their devil. We had capitalism in certain countries before Marx, though. But it's double, because what we see happening in the world now is that everything is being seen under a capitalistic lens, and therefore it must be bad. I mean, not too long ago, people were talking about, well, maybe they're still being talking about it this week, about, who are they? Branson from Virgin, and what's his name? Bezos from Amazon. Well, they went into space. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, they went. Well, they could have ended world hunger with that money. And the thing is, that's not true. But the fact that it's true or not isn't even interesting. They've earned that money. So who are we to decide how they will spend their money? Yeah, but it's a lot of money. Yeah, it is a lot of money. Did they break the law in earning it? No, they earned it by, well, investing it wisely, or giving jobs to people, and doing stuff. And I know people will tell me, yeah, but Amazon is really bad because it's not paying its workers enough, and it has very, very high demands on the workers, and etc., etc., etc. And you know what? I'm willing to believe that you're correct. But what happened to our society that all of a sudden people are working for too little money? That this work is so hard. And is this work really so hard? Because I can remember that people 100 years ago, especially in Europe, sometimes they had the most disgusting of jobs. I mean, coal miners sometimes would go into the mines naked because otherwise it would be too hot for them. They would come back completely covered in coal dust, which is bad for their health, because obviously coal, you breathe it in and it would fuck up your lungs. So this is a problem. Do we still have this problem in the Western world? Well, not really. Well, why don't we? Are we no longer using coal? Yeah, sure we are using coal. But we've created ways of getting it better. See, how did we create those ways? Well, because there was an incentive to do so. Now, I can indeed, Leprechaun, agree with you whether Bezos earned his money ethically. But I can't argue whether he earned it legally, because unfortunately, paying people a low wage is indeed legal, especially in states where you don't have a minimum wage. Do I agree with this? Well, I think it's unreasonable, unfair, and all the other uns we can come up with. But is it illegal? No, it's not. And the people that work for Bezos, well, I mean, they still have a choice. Now, it's true that in a lot of places, these people, people like Bezos, may be the only employers that are about. And that's a problem. But that really is a problem. I'm not joking about that. But how come in a lot of places these people are the only employers? Well, that's where socialism comes back in, even in America, a country where they like to think that, oh yeah, no, socialism is a bad thing and all Americans are against it. Well, yeah, true. But even in America, socialism is still a thing, because Bezos is able to do what he does because other companies can't do what he does. Why? Because he gets protection from the government. How dare you do the same thing as he does? Either he can buy you out, or he can use the law to make you stop. And therein we know that this isn't capitalism. Because if I want to start a company, sure, companies like Amazon should be able to price me out of the market. That's unfair perhaps, but it's completely legal. But companies like him shouldn't be able to tell me I can't do this job because it infringes on their rights. And I totally agree with you, Paulo. Bezos does take advantage of tax loopholes. But in all fairness, who doesn't? Hell, I even take advantage of tax loopholes if I could. Obviously, my income is so low that even if I did, it made absolutely no sense. But that's because politicians and governments aren't caring about the people. They're caring about the money. And all of a sudden, loopholes get invented and they don't get closed. Why don't they get closed? Because a lot of politicians use these loopholes as well. The thing with these loopholes is that they are legal. Now, in a capitalistic system, you wouldn't have these loopholes because taxes aren't that big of a deal in a world of capitalism. I mean, every country in the West, I'm not sure about the United States, by the way, but they have a value-added tax system. How is that fair? Well, it's not. Yeah, but it's fair because everyone pays the same amount of added tax. Yeah, sure, fair enough. But if I need 10 breads to survive 10 days, just ballpark numbers, don't get me wrong, that means that out of those 10 breads, and let's assume that these 10 breads cost me €1, but 21% in the Netherlands of this is roughly value-added tax. It's less. I think it's 10%. Sorry, 10% of this is value-added tax. Then on those 10 breads, I'll pay basically 1 bread to the government. Now, someone who's a lot richer than me does the same thing. But he's not going to get more breads than I do. So I pay as much taxes as he does. But he can use loopholes to get some of that money back. I can't. I wonder if Justin Trudeau was ever a coal miner. I don't think he ever was. Well, he did have blackface, fair enough, but I don't think he was a coal miner. And back to the topic though, is it fair to say it's socialism then versus capitalism? Well, no, because we've never seen socialism versus capitalism. Even in the Western world, most of our capitalism has so much protections on it. And those protections are, in a form, socialism. For example, look at the bank problem we had a few years back in 2008. All the banks had all these problems. Yeah, how did they get to have these problems? Well, because they speculated with our money. So the banks failed. So the government saved the banks. And now the banks make a profit again. Are those profits also covered by us? Are we going to get some of those profits back? No. But we were paying for them when they needed to be saved. Now, I understand that we say, well, if banks fail, we need to save them because, well, the problem is big if we don't save them. I'm not sure if it's true, but I understand the sentiment. Actually, I don't think it's true, but that's a different story altogether. But if we say we're using communal money, because that's basically what it is, we're using communal money to save the banks, how come when the banks are saved, their profits aren't communal money as well? Because socialism doesn't care about the people. Had we lived under a capitalist system and the banks failed, they would have failed. No one would have saved them. Why would no one have saved them? Well, I wouldn't say no one, but unless I had the money, the possibility of earning that money back, no one would have saved them. And if I would invest money in them to save them, then if they would have been saved like that, that money would have come to me, not to the bank. They should have let 1 or 2 banks fail per country. I'm not sure about that. I know that Iceland basically let their banks fail. Iceland, by the way, was the country that first came out of the banking crisis and was first to gain a financial footing again. The Netherlands, funny enough, all but one bank in this country were saved. All but one. And because of that, our homeowners had massive taxes because the banks weren't allowed to give you a decent mortgage mortgage percentage on, how do you call it? When you have a mortgage, part of your mortgage you pay as a percentage of it goes back to the bank. Can't find the right word. But in the country, all the banks that gotten government support weren't allowed to give decent prices. They all had to ask the maximum feasible so that they could earn money as fast as they could. I can't find the word now. Well, it's a percentage you pay on top of the money you loaned. So you loan €100, for example, you have to pay them back €105. And there was one bank that interest, thank you ludicrous, I really couldn't find the word again. But there was one bank in the Netherlands that was allowed to say, okay, this is the amount of rent I'm going to say. And all the banks that were given government support had to be higher than that one bank. So in the Netherlands, we had an interest rate of 5%, sometimes even 6%, when countries around us were around 3%. And until the government support was ended on these banks, the banks in the Netherlands couldn't be price fighting on the interest on mortgages. Now, the worst part of this is that in other countries in Europe, the rent was already going down. But in the Netherlands, we were still paying a lot of rent on mortgages. We were still paying a lot of interest on mortgages. The banks could loan money from the European Bank at an interest of 0 point something percent, and we were still paying 5%. Why? Well, not because of capitalism. Because if it had been capitalism that caused that, other banks would go into the Netherlands and say, you know what? They can't offer you a better price, but we fucking can. But they weren't allowed to do that. Why not? Well, because the banks that weren't allowed to give a better price weren't allowed to give a better price because they were protected by the government. But the government then also had to make it difficult for other banks to come into the Netherlands, because otherwise they wouldn't earn their money back, all because they saved them. So it was socialism when the costs went up, when banks were failing. But once they started making money, well, it's capitalism. It's their own company. I mean, you can't say that they have to pay you back. Well, obviously they had to pay the money back that they were given by the government to save them. But that money didn't go to the civilians, the people that actually paid. Because banks don't make money, banks take money. Most banks now charge you for a checking account, and yet you're required by law to have one. Well, this is not only true in Portugal, this is true in the Netherlands as well. There's already one bank in the Netherlands that said you're no longer allowed to take out more than €10,000 a year. If you take out more than €10,000 a year, you were going to have to pay a fee for taking out more than €10,000 a year. So you have to have a bank account. You're not allowed not to have a bank account. You're not allowed to pay anything without a bank account. And we're going to limit the amount of money you're allowed to have. Now, they will tell you that this is a way to stop criminal behavior and whatnot, but that's bullshit, because criminals will be criminals. Most criminals don't leave their money lying around on bank accounts. This is why they sometimes still find large amounts of cash. And back in the day, or I'm pretty sure it's still true today, there are a lot of people who will keep their earnings or their savings, or what you call it, under their mattress, which is a gamble, sure, but there are lots of people that do this. Somehow, we call this capitalism. That's not capitalism, though. That's socialism. That's the government telling you that you need to have a bank account, and then telling the banks, hey, you know what? Fuck it, do whatever you want. If it goes well, it's your money, because capitalism. But don't worry, if you fail, we'll save you. Because we know you're not a capitalistic bank. We know our country isn't a capitalistic country. So as soon as you start losing money, I know the citizens are going to have a problem, and we force the citizens to take these bank accounts because, well, this is our way of control. Therefore, we will save the banks. And because we save the banks, yada, 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 blah, 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 the people have to pay whilst the rich getting richer. Now, everyone keeps talking about capitalism is the rich getting richer, which is partly true for sure. But in capitalism, someone gets richer because they offer a product or a service that people are willing to pay for. In socialism, people get richer because, well, the citizens have to do it, whether they like it or not. And look at the whole corona thing now. They're talking about the vaccination as if it's a good thing, but they've already stopped talking about how it's a voluntary thing, and they're starting to talk about how people should be mandated to do this. Not that a lot of people are surprised about this, but this is going on. Now, who's paying for it? Well, the governments are paying for it. Well, bullshit, because the governments don't have money. So if the governments are paying for it, the citizens are paying for it. Now, if I were to tell you that, okay, you could have a vaccine, it's your own choice, and it costs you €100 or more, because let's be honest, they're more expensive than €100, then you would have the choice to pay that €100. You would either say, yeah, sure, why not? Or you would say, yeah, fuck it, €100, you know what? I'll have the sniffles for a few weeks. I'll be fine. But government has decided that it's not your choice. So you can say, I'll not pay €100. But the government will say, well, that's all right, I'll pay it for you. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, if the government pays it for me, well, that's fine then, that's free. And these people are idiots, because if your government pays it for you, you're paying it. Because you're paying it back by the taxes you pay, on the taxes you pay on your income, on the taxes you pay on buying products that you buy. And if the government finally has a lot of money, This is a funny thing. For example, this happened in the Netherlands. The Netherlands were slightly going towards a surplus of money, so the government gave a lot of money to other countries. Oh, it's only to help them, obviously, because look at how good we are. We can help other countries. But yeah, no, it's citizens' money that's being given away. This is not what capitalism does. This is not a healthy market. This is what socialism does. And I love it how people keep talking about how it's a capitalism versus socialism thing. It's never been a capitalism versus socialism thing. Okay, I'm going to take a drink, 1 second. Now, if we look at it black and white, a capitalistic economic model can succeed under nearly all governments, as long as these governments aren't totalitarian, as long as these governments aren't planned economies. So a capitalistic economy model relies on free market conditions, both for the creation of wealth, the production of goods and services, and the supply and demand thingy in the market. The market itself decides, the people decide what they want. Now obviously with capitalism comes people making adverts trying to create a demand. Yeah, sure, why not? But that still gives you the choice to say, I want this. Do I really need this iPhone 11? Well, probably not, but I really like it and it's only €1,000. Yeah, I know people who will say this. Would I pay €1,000 for an iPhone or any smartphone? No, hell not. Personally, I wouldn't pay more than a few €100, and I think a few €100 is already too much, let's be honest. But that's a point of view. Capitalism allows me to have that point of view. Socialism will tell me that I need that iPhone. It'll force me to get that iPhone. But the worst part is that iPhone under socialism wouldn't be as good as it is under capitalism. Because yeah, sure, €1,000 for a phone is stupid money, but it at least is slightly better than the previous one, because otherwise no one would pay that stupid money for it. Under socialism, the economic model, and I'm not talking about socialism, the social model, the political model, but purely the economic model, the production of goods and services are either partly or fully regulated by the government. The government will tell the world, in this case the country, what is a good thing to have. For example, in the Netherlands, now people don't like me to say this, but if we look at, for example, the education for our medical doctors in the Netherlands, this is not something done by capitalism, this is something done by socialism. Now, why can I say this is done by socialism? Because the government has decided how many people are allowed to graduate based on this system. And while I say this, I realize I'm wrong, because the government doesn't set a number on how many people are allowed to graduate, but they do set a number on how many people are allowed to study for it. Now, we do know that people during studies fall out. They'll never finish their study. This happens. But the government has already decided, like, okay, there's only so many people that are allowed to study to become a medical doctor in the Netherlands. Why? We've been talking about in the Netherlands for years now how we have a shortage of medical doctors. And still the government says, yeah, but you're only allowed to educate an X percentage of them, and that percentage is too low. We know it's too low. How do we know it's too low? Because we are getting doctors from other countries to fill our hospitals. Now, the government isn't a problem by it, because no, we've made a calculation on this. We should have had enough. And indeed, dropout rates in STEM are high. Well, not obviously, because it's also hard. Let's be honest. It is. I'm not going to make people studying for social issues. Yeah, sure, whatever. But STEM, especially medical. It's one of the problems for a lot of people that are studying to become doctors nowadays, for example, is the dichotomy between reality and what's being pushed by our political system. In my undergrad degree, 50% completed it. Yeah, a lot of people drop out. Well, but 50%, that means half of them dropped out. That's even higher than I had anticipated. Sorry, Ludicrous. But I guess maybe yours is particularly difficult. Now, if we go back to the idea of a social economic model, the government says this is how much we want from it. It's a planned economy. They sometimes also call it central planning. But the planned economy well, yeah, central planners. The economy structure is created as an economy where on the whim of the government we say, okay, this is how much we're going to produce of this is how much we're going to produce of that, and this is going to be enough because we say so. Now, most countries in the Western world are mixed. Economic-wise, they're mixed. There are no countries in the Western world that are fully capitalistic. Actually, the bigger the pie is, the bigger the chances that it has become socialistic, planned, protected by governments. Why? Well, capitalistic countries will not have massive international companies. Why not? Because for capitalism to become truly what it is, these international global monopolies will have a problem. Because someone can create what they are doing at a cheaper rate. So they need protection of governments to prevent that from happening. Now, obviously, it's going to be difficult. I mean, take example Google. Google is huge. It can create protections for its products, but it also needs governments to help it protect its products. Look at Google in China. It's already talking with the government in China for a few years now, so that they can make a better product for the Chinese market. But some of the things they are doing for the Chinese market, they're also doing in the rest of the world, because China would really like it if that would happen. And Google is a company that likes to make money. Now, this is the thing, though. A lot of people will say, see, that means that they're a capitalistic company. No, because socialists like to make money too. No, don't talk rubbish. Socialists share their wealth. Yep. That's why Bernie Sanders has 3 houses. That's why that Bint that started BLM together with those other 2 Bints now owns 3 huge mansions. Because she likes to share the wealth with the rest of her people. The idea that socialism is about equity or equality is as dumb as it gets, because socialism has once and again, every single time, proven that this is not the case. So the dichotomy is not socialism versus capitalism. The dichotomy is socialism versus freedom. And a lot of people don't seem to think that this is the case. And I don't know why they seem to think that this is not the case, but it is. Look at companies like Amazon. Yeah, they make a lot of money. And why are they making a lot of money? Well, because they can. Well, can't you? It's going to be very difficult for you to do this as well. Socialism is the biggest scam and hypocrisy. Hi there, James Gentry. Welcome to the server. And I totally agree with you, mate. Because it is. And people keep believing it. People keep falling for it. Oh, no, yeah, no. Socialism is all about freedom. Yeah, you have the freedom to do what you're told. But people don't like to think this. People like to think socialism is a good thing because this is what they've been told for a long time in their society, in their schooling systems, in their news in the Western world. And then look at the stupidest things people say. But hey, it's all about freedom. No, socialists are all about freedom when they can. But as soon as they come into power, they will stop it. There is no freedom under a socialistic country. Look at Venezuela. Look at China. Look at Cuba. Yeah, but Cuba is failing because of America. Well, it is true that America has trade embargoes on Cuba. And I know Cuba is a small country. But the thing is, Cuba has trade embargoes with every country in the world. Cuba doesn't allow a lot of countries to import products into Cuba. So when people talk about how Cuba is poor and the people, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough food, and it's all because of America, yeah, that's not quite true. Now the biggest importer in Cuba would have been Venezuela. But Venezuela is a failed state too, and all of a sudden Venezuela isn't moving goods to Cuba. But why isn't Suriname? Why isn't Argentina? Well, because they aren't allowed to trade with Cuba, because Cuba puts a huge tariff on it. If I disagree with socialism, I must be a monster. Ludicrous. Seriously, you know this. I am, obviously. But yeah, no, I mean, this is what a lot of kids seem to think nowadays. Socialism is good. How can you not agree with socialism? But it is socialism versus freedom, and not socialism versus capitalism. And I'm not sure why people keep thinking that it is socialism versus capitalism. I know why schools keep calling it that. I know why the media keeps calling it that. I don't know why people don't recognize that this is not true. Because and a lot of people know these images, and I'll see if I can find one real fast. Come on then. Let's see if I can find one real fast. Let's show you what beauty I can find. And it's silly because I say what beauty I can find, but it's rubbish to say it's beautiful. But we've seen this so many times. There are so many examples of this that it's really, by lack of better words, ludicrous that people still believe this. And I know ludicrous, I didn't mean you, mate. I had to use one word. Now, this is an image that a lot of people may already have seen. Let me see if I can make it visible and put it on the right size. Come on. See, I'm really not that good at this. I'm sorry. There we go. I mean, this is what's true. Now, obviously, this is a little bit of a how do you call it? A fast track, because your kids on socialism don't become black thugs. That's obviously not true. But your hospitals on socialism, yeah. This is what happens with socialistic countries. Your cities in socialism, yeah. I mean, you should go, if you ever have the chance to go to Poland, you should really go to that country. You can see which parts of the country the buildings are older than socialism and which buildings are built during socialism. Copyright 2012 as long as I get my rates. Well, there you go. And this is the thing. Who gets wealthy under socialism? Well, obviously the story here is that the politicians get wealthy. But trust you me, the big monopoly cartels, the industry cartels, they too get rich under socialism. Obviously they do. Why? Well, because it's a good thing for them. I mean, they support the social regime. And because they support the social regime, they are being given, how do you call this? Preferential treatment. They are given the way to keep doing what they are doing. So when people talk about how it's capitalism versus socialism, take a moment out of your day to try to explain to them that it's not capitalism versus socialism. It's capitalism and freedom, or freedom versus socialism. And of course, under capitalism, some people will get rich beyond belief. Well, the only reason they can get rich beyond belief at this point in time is because there are so many protections on them. They can do things, lose money, and then, yeah, sure, whatever. But if you come in and you want to produce the same cheaper, you're not going to be allowed. They are protected. But if they buy you out because your product is easily as good as they are, then you can't be protected. They can do whatever they want with you. And the pharma industry is a great example of this. How many drugs prices, legal drug prices, have gone up exponentially because, well, capitalism. But it's not capitalism, because if it were capitalism, I was allowed to try and make those products too. The only reason why they can raise prices of these products so exponentially is because they know that no one is allowed to compete with them. And that's socialism. So once again, when you ever hear people talk about, well, it's capitalism versus socialism, take a moment out of your day to try to explain to them. It's not capitalism versus socialism. It's freedom versus socialism. And we haven't had a lot of freedom for a long time, but we are losing it exponentially. Because of Corona, because of the climate, because someone stubbed their toe and that wall just really needs to go, because what if someone else stubs their toe against it? Sounds silly? Yeah, well, if you think about what socialism does, if you really look into it, what socialism does is really silly how people can believe it. The worst part is you can't really blame them because they have been brainwashed. So I really hope that when people talk to you about how it's capitalism versus socialism, you will start pointing out it's not capitalism versus socialism. It's freedom versus socialism. Capitalism exists under socialism. It's just not for the people. Anyway, I think this is what I'm going to call it quits, because I notice myself repeating myself. If you have any questions, if you have any criticism, well, it's always welcome. By all means, drop your questions down below and I will try to answer them when I can. And if anyone else has something to say, do so fast, or otherwise I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I'm going to give a few moments on the chat time for them to realize that I'm pissing off. Maybe they have something to say, it's possible. And then I'm going back to my Discord server. Am I looking at it? Yes, I am. Am I missing something? Yes, I am. Well, there's not a lot of chat coming back from the stream. And that could be because it takes forever, I don't know.